Let me thank you all for being here. I'm Chris Comer. I'm the Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. And this is a first for the college, something we're really excited about. We wanted for a long time to have an event to bring all of the college together, people from the social sciences, natural sciences, humanities, and talk about big issues that would be fun to discuss. And for this first event, we thought we could do no better than the two Regents professors who will be here tonight to discuss the issue of human nature. But before we do that, we wanted to link this up to something else that is really close to our hearts, which is to recognize teaching excellence that goes along with great scholarship. And we have some amazing teachers in the college. And tonight we're going to tell you about two who will be recognized at commencement and one new award that will be given out tonight for the first time. And for that purpose, I'd like to introduce Jenny McNulty, who is the Associate Dean in the College of Arts and Sciences. Jenny?
Thanks. The first award of the evening is the Helen and Winston Cox Educational Excellence Award. This award is made annually to faculty in the College of Arts and Sciences who are not yet tenured based on superior contributions to the education of students. This award was established by the Cox children in honor of their parents. At various points in his career, Winston Cox was a teacher in a one-room schoolhouse and an oilman. His children chose to recognize the important contributions of teachers with this award. While this award will be presented at graduation, we want to announce the 2013 award winners here. Would the following individuals stand and be recognized? Dr. Daisy Rooks, Assistant Professor of Sociology, and Dr. Tobin Shear, Assistant Professor of History and Director of African American Studies. Congratulations. The second award of the evening is the brand new College of Arts and Sciences Excellence Award for teaching across the curriculum. And before I announce the winners, I want to tell you a little bit about this award. This award was established to recognize a faculty member for his or her excellence in teaching at all levels of the curriculum. It was created this year, 2013, by the College External Advisory Board. The college exists to educate students. Having our best teachers engage with students at all stages in their academic career shows our commitment to their education. Students are important to us from the day they arrive on campus to the day they leave. This award was designed to recognize those individuals who demonstrate superior teaching at the upper level as well as introductory level of the curriculum. Recipients of this award are also active in student advising and mentoring and are accessible to students beyond normal office hours. Since the first year at the university is a critical junction for students, it is vital to have our best faculty teaching these students in exciting and meaningful ways. Professors often focus their attention on specialized courses in their area of expertise and leave the teaching of freshmen to others. While it is, of course, important for us to teach our juniors, our seniors, and our graduate students, it is also important to teach our freshmen and sophomores. This award recognizes faculty who do this, who teach our upper-level students and our freshmen and sophomores. The 2013 award recipient is Professor Nate McCready from the Department of Physics and Astronomy. Come on down. Lucky for me, Nate and I were supposed to be playing hockey tonight against each other. I wanted to tell you a little bit about Nate. Nate joined the faculty at the University of Montana in 2009. Since that time, he has become one of the best instructors at He teaches large enrollment gen ed courses as well as upper division astronomy and physics courses. His classroom is a dynamic learning environment, and his commitment to teaching excellence is evident to his colleagues and his students alike. Professor McCready's students, majors and non-majors, describe him as dedicated, exciting, challenging, legit, fun, involved, amazing, effective, and excellent. Not only is Nate a talented lecturer with seeming unbounded enthusiasm and energy, but he also challenges his students to push themselves to achieve their full potential. Nate's department chair remarks, "It is a rare gift for a teacher to be able to convince his students to work hard and enjoy doing so." Nate clearly has this gift. Often seen on late summer evenings at the Blue Mountain Observatory, Professor McCready shares his love of the stars with the Missoula community. It is no wonder a student comments, "He gave me my first taste of what it's truly like to be an astronomer and somehow made me enjoy spending 30 hours a week in the laboratory." Dr. McCready is also an accomplished scholar who manages to include undergraduates in his research projects. He is currently involved in a project called Minerva to place a UM-owned and operated telescope on Mount Palomar to search for planets orbiting distant stars. The UN telescope will be operated from campus. Nate plans to use this telescope to give our students the opportunity to plan and execute astronomical observations using state-of-the-art equipment. Through projects like this, Nate enhances the undergraduate experience beyond the walls of the classroom. Whether searching for life on other planets or teaching UM students, Professor Nate McCready is an inspiration to us all. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm really honored to be here and receive this award tonight. I just wanted to make a couple quick remarks. I know we have a big program tonight, but I wanted to start out just by saying that science is a human activity. Science is something that human beings do. It's something that we do. It's a way that we explore the universe in which we live and try to understand what's around us and what our place in the universe is. And when I teach majors, as Jenny mentioned, they bring the enthusiasm in the classroom. They're already excited about science by the time they get to me. So I take their enthusiasm and I focus it, and I push them, I challenge them to excel and to really go beyond what they thought they could do and do things that they didn't know they can do. But when I teach non-majors in the lower division courses, students that are fulfilling a general ed requirement for something and don't realize that science is something interesting to them or that science is something they can even do, I bring the enthusiasm in those classes. And I use my enthusiasm to sort of infect them, to try and inspire them to really think science is a human thing. This is something humans do, like literature, like art, like music. And I'm really honored tonight to receive the Teaching Across the Curriculum Award because teaching is very important to me. It's important at this university. I'm a research scholar. I'm a research scientist. I come from a research astrophysics background. But teaching is very important to me. And I want to bring my science and the enthusiasm and passion that I have for astrophysics to my students, and whether it be the majors or non-majors. Teaching well, like researching well, takes time, takes effort, takes dedication. I'd really like to thank, first off, my wife, Erin, who's here tonight, for being willing to put up with all the time that I put into teaching preparation in particular. I'd like to thank Chris Comer and Jenny McNulty tonight. I'd really especially like to thank the College of Arts and Sciences Advisory Board for bestowing on me this inaugural award. I'm very excited to be the first recipient. I'd like to thank Dr. Ware, who's not here tonight, my department chair who nominated me, and also my students that wrote on my behalf. Thank you so much for this award.
So you can see our faculty are not only great scholars and teachers, they're snappy dressers as well. Let me kick off the next phase of tonight's activities. First of all, I should tell you that those who are standing in the back, there really are seats down here if you want to come forward. Please, don't be shy. This was meant to be an informal evening, so please come forward. For the next phase of the program, I just want to let you know that this is not a lecture. This is going to be a dialogue. And this is the spirit we hope to establish with these programs going into the future. We want you to know that the academy is all about speaking together and sometimes differing, sometimes agreeing, but having those intense discussions. That's what the best of the academy is about. So we've invited two of the best of our academy here. For this very special evening, we're going to get an introduction by another faculty member that I think is very special. I just wanted to recognize while we're here that it's really great to see other deans here. It's great to see the Vice President for Research here and Creative Scholarship, and it's great to see the President here. So really, we appreciate you coming to the college to see an event like this. The two speakers tonight who are going to be in dialogue are two of our long-term, very esteemed faculty members. We thought there would be a perfect symmetry to have one of our newest and most dynamic faculty members introduce them. So I'd like to introduce Roz Lapierre, who is a new faculty member in Environmental Studies and studies traditional environmental knowledge, and she's going to introduce tonight's speakers. Rosalind?
I'm not sure if is this on, my mic? Yeah. Perfect, okay. So my name is Rosalind Lapierre, and Dean Comer had asked me to introduce myself very briefly. I have an undergraduate degree in physics, and I have a master's degree from a religious studies department, and completing my degree right now in history, studying mostly environmental history at the University of Montana. So I have three very completely different degrees, but in my mind, they're all very much the same because it's all sort of studying sort of the same types of interesting, how does the world work? What do people think about? Why do we believe what we believe? And so it was really interesting to me that tonight our topic is sort of human nature, which is something I'm very interested in, and interested in especially from personally sort of a religious perspective. What are people's beliefs in terms of reality? Is reality real? That's another thing I was interested in studying physics, right? What's real in the universe versus what's not. So anyway, so tonight we have two, as Dean Comer mentioned, distinguished professors who are both Regents professors. And if you don't know what a Regents professor is, I thought I'd let you know. So a Regents professor is somebody that is given the distinction from the Montana Board of Regents, is for a full-time faculty member who possesses an outstanding record of commitment to the university and having demonstrated true excellence in sort of the three areas that universities, of course, prize, which are instruction, scholarship, and service, and those who have also distinguished themselves sort of above and beyond at the university level. So the two professors tonight who will be in dialogue and sort of the process, and correct me if I'm wrong, the process tonight is both professors will be speaking very briefly between sort of 10 and 15 minutes in dialogue. And then afterwards, we're going to open it up to discussion. So tonight is mostly a discussion that the community here will be having with the two speakers. So that's sort of the process. We have a mic up here. We would like people after the dialogue has begun, if you're interested in asking a question, to come up and provide either questions or comments. Or if you are over here and you don't want to go over there, just speak loud enough and then I will repeat sort of your question. So our two professors this evening are Professor Paul Lauren from the history department. He's the first person to receive a Regents Professor distinction here. He's received 2 PhDs from Stanford University, one in history and one in political science. He is an internationally recognized teacher and scholar on diplomacy, international relations, and human rights. He has published, of course, numerous articles, books, and chapters, many of which have been translated into many different languages around the world. His most highly recognized work, which is now in its 3rd edition, was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize, which is The Evolution of International Human Rights. I highly recommend it for reading if you are so interested. And our other distinguished professor is Fred Allendorf, who's also a Regents professor from the Division of Biological Sciences. He received his PhD in fisheries and genetics from the University of Washington. His research focuses on the application of population and evolutionary genetics to problems in conservation biology. His latest work, along with a co-author, is The Conservation and Genetics of Populations. It provides an understanding of how genetics can be used to conserve species threatened with extinction. His research interests, of course, include, evolution, population genetics, and conservation biology. So with that, I ask our two distinguished professors to come up. And are they presenting individually or together?
Fred goes first.
Okay. And I think we're going to have to dim the lights because he's going to be doing a PowerPoint.
Well, I'd like to thank Rosalind for the introduction. I'm really honored to be here tonight to talk with everybody. I'd like to thank Chris and everybody else in the College of Arts and Sciences office for setting this up. And most of all, I'd like to thank everybody here. It's a wonderful turnout. So, as Rosalind said, the question tonight, human nature, is one of those fundamental questions which I think everybody's interested in. So I thought it'd be worthwhile to begin with a little bit of reflection. So what I would like everybody to do, just read this question. So this is one of those classic Zen koans, one of those questions that don't really have an answer, but just thinking about it can be informative. So I'd like everybody, has everybody read the question? Just close your eyes for about a minute or so and just breathe and just think about the question. And think just think about the question. I won't tell you any more than that. So you can start now, and I'll tell you when you can open your eyes, and I'll start talking again. Okay, you can open your eyes. So as an evolutionary biologist, evolutionary biology is fascinated by ancestors. And from an evolutionary perspective, this is what most of your ancestors looked like. I don't know if anybody in here envisioned those when they're thinking about the face of their ancestors, especially like these little ancestors over here have a nice little face they found on the internet. So when Paul and I and Chris met to talk about this, we were trying to decide who was going to go first. And Paul said, I always have to go first because I'm the historian. So he didn't want to go first. But I think that was really appropriate because as an evolutionary biologist, I'm also a historian. So tonight I have the first 4 billion years to talk about, and Chris gets the last 2,000 or so. Or no, 5,000, 7,000 maybe. So as I said, evolution is also the study of history, but evolution is a study of deep history. So this is a phylogenetic tree that goes back to the beginning of his life about 4 billion years ago. And I know everybody here has seen something like this. And so we're up here, up at this very, very tip, up here with animals and fungi and slime molds, up there in the really advanced creatures. And if we sort of fast forward and go back just a few million years ago, we have our closest relatives that are living today are the bonobos and the chimps. And we've shared, so we've only been isolated from them for 4 million years. So 4 million years minus 4 billion years. So we have a shared common ancestry with bonobos and chimps for 99.9% of evolutionary history. And I think we're not always aware of just how much our being is influenced by this. And so we think, so Rosalind asked the question about, is the world real? Well, I think the world's real. But our perception of the world, the way we see the world, the way we smell and hear the world, is all filtered by our senses. And so our senses are not just neutral windows that take information from the world, but rather they filter it in a way that over evolutionary history has improved our chances of surviving and reproducing. And this is one of my favorite evolutionary questions. So, why do human feces smell like shit? And it sounds like a silly question, everybody laughs, But think about it. So there's nothing intrinsic about the feces which smells bad. I mean, dogs love to eat human feces. So there's nothing intrinsic in human feces. So what is it about human feces that when we smell it, we are repulsed? And the reason is because throughout human history, young children or babies that thought that human feces smelled pretty good and played with it or put it in their mouth were much more likely to die and not leave ancestors. So that repulsion that we have when we smell feces is because of natural selection. So all of our senses are that way. So our seeing and hearing, colors, everything is influenced by our senses, which interpret the world in a way which is going to increase our chances of surviving and reproducing. So the world is real, but our interpretation of the world is dependent upon this body that we live in right now, which has come about over 4 billion years of evolution. So human nature, from a genetics perspective. So people asked me at dinner tonight, what was I going to talk about? And I said it's pretty predictable as an evolutionary biologist. So human nature is some combination of genes and some combination of the environment, the way that we've been brought up, the world that we live in. So there's some complex interaction going on there that brings about human nature. And this is just one simple example. So looking at a behavior like depression, and this shows two different groups of people on the left and the right that have a different genotype at one single gene out of the 30 or 40,000 that we have inside of our body. And this is the major depression episodes that people have experienced and on the y-axis. So if we look at individuals on the left, which have a particular genotype, those individuals that have experienced more depression events, that they're with different genotypes, their probability of being depressed is much higher, the larger the number of major depression episodes that they've had, going up to 4+. Well, individuals on the right that differ at a single gene, they aren't influenced by that environment in the same way. So no matter how many episodes they've had, their probability of being depressed does not go up. So this is the way that the genes that we carry interact with the environment to bring about certain ways that we experience our life. And this is some behavioral studies looking at what proportion of our personality is influenced by genetics. So looking at traits like openness, agreeableness, conscientiousness, neuroticism, or extroversion. And these are 3 different studies all looking at these different traits. And they all come up with the same conclusion. About 40 to 50% of the variability in people for these traits is influenced by their genes. So genetics has a major effect on a lot of our different personality traits. However, speaking of the social sciences and biology, there's sometimes a misunderstanding by people of what this actually means. So just because something is largely under genetic influence does not mean that it can't be changed by changing the environment. So strong genetic influence does not mean that we can't change if we change the environment. And this is a nice example of that. So phenylketonuria, PKU, is caused by a single gene. If untreated, results in retardation and a number of other problems, seizures, other serious medical disorders. So it's caused by a single gene. So it's completely genetic. Whether or not you have PKU is determined by one single gene that you inherited from your mother and your father. However, even though it's genetic, it can be cured by modifying the environment. So now when babies are born in a hospital, we take a sample of blood. That sample of blood is then analyzed. You can tell an individual's genotype, whether they do have PKU or they don't. And then if they do have PKU, the environment is changed by such things as you can't drink Diet Pepsi because phenylalanine is what's used to sweeten Diet Pepsi, and phenylalanine. It's the excess of phenylalanine which causes all the problems associated with PKU. And so if we have special diets for people with PKU and they avoid certain foods and try to eat things which are phenol-free and reduce a number of things on the outside which have a lot of phenylalanine, then even though it's completely genetic, we can completely change whether or not people have PKU. So just because something is genetic doesn't mean that it's somehow fixed and we can't modify people's, the way they look or their behavior. So just to finish up and thinking about the way our evolution may influence human nature, so Darwin's big contribution to evolution was the theory of natural selection, that looking around the room, we see a lot of genetic differences between people in this room. Some of those differences are going to influence whether we survive or whether we reproduce or not successfully. And if that variation has a genetic basis to it, then those genes which are associated with higher survival, greater reproductive success will increase in frequency. And that's just natural selection. And if we think about genes within individual populations, very often being more aggressive has an advantage, and people that are more aggressive can sometimes live longer or have greater reproductive success. So in that sense, genes can be selected for by natural selection to increase in frequency within populations. However, there's another level of selection going on, and this has been more controversial, but if we not only have individuals in a human organization, but we also have groups. Historically, they've been tribes or villages, and these same principles can take place at this level as well at the individual level. So tribes, there's variability in tribes and their behavior and other aspects. Some tribes are more successful at others, some persist longer, some are more successful at spreading. And if those differences between tribes have a genetic basis to them, then those characteristics that are going to lead to lower extinction of tribes and greater rate of spread are going to be selected for by this process. And very often traits that are associated with altruistic behavior or cooperative behavior do result in tribes being more successful. So at this level, selection of tribes or groups can be acting to increase the frequency of genes which bring about greater cooperation or even altruistic behavior of individuals. So in some sense, I mean, this is obviously 10 minutes is pretty oversimplistic, but at some level there's this conflict in terms of the way the humans have been selected through human history for traits which increase our individual fitness versus traits which increase the frequency of the groups that we live in. And I think this is one explanation why humans can sometimes behave so horribly, but at other times behave in such a beautiful, altruistic way. And that's all I had to say in my 10 or 15 minutes. Just close it. Okay.
Thank you. Good, thanks, Henry. I want to, like Fred, thank Chris and others responsible for this. I want to thank all of you for coming and hope that we can say something that's truly of some interest to you and can get you to think about this question of human nature. I feel more comfortable with a piece of chalk in my hand than I do a PowerPoint. So you'll have to let my words be images for you rather than physical images. I drive a car about every day or ride the bus every day, but that does not mean I understand why they work. I use a computer every day, and I can assure you, as Abby from GrisTech will also assure you, right? That doesn't mean I understand why that computer works the way that it does. I spend every day studying human beings and human nature. And that does not mean I understand all the reasons why we behave the way we do. I do understand two things, and I think I can speak for most people in the humanities who are in this room this evening, and those two things are as follows. One, that human beings are very complex, are capable of many different kinds of actions. And secondly, just because something can't be measured in a way that people in the, quote, hard sciences always discuss, does not mean it's not true or that it doesn't occur. There are things that are, and I think do remain mysteries to some extent. But what all of us are concerned with, not only those of us who deal professionally with this, but I would argue all human beings, look at this question of human nature in one way or the other. That is, of all of the questions in the world, there is probably no single question, other than human nature, that has been more fascinating and more challenging than this one. Indeed, in a subject that I also have been given 10 to 12 minutes to discuss, it's probably the largest subject that anyone has ever considered before. That is, who are we? Why do we behave the way we do? Right? And how do you explain that? Is the answer for human behavior for all of us, for you and I and our people we know and in those in history, is the answer pre-genetically determined? Do we behave the way we do because of chemical reactions, of electrical impulses? Some people would say yes, to a certain degree. Do we behave the way we do because of social constructs? That is, society and then our environment mold us in a particular way. Or, and a question that I find particularly fascinating, do we have any free will in this? Are we free to make choices about what we will do and what we will not do? It's this question of human nature that fascinates, I think, all of us. Professionally, I deal with this issue every day. My field is human rights. And fundamentally, that's a question of how we behave with reference, not to ourselves, but how do we behave with reference to other people? How do we treat them? And in this, I need to tell you that when you work in the area of human rights, the fundamental question you examine is human nature, but you examine it at the extremes. And I never understood this when I first began. And I'd like to explain what I mean by that. For anyone in the area of human rights, you study those people with extraordinary courage, those people with a sense of justice, those people with a sense of responsibility to the well-being of other people. And you see time and time and time again, both in history as well as in our contemporary world, people who willingly, unselfishly, give of themselves, sometimes including their lives, to help other people. These are the people who have campaigned against slavery. These are the people who have campaigned for equal rights for women. These are people who have given their lives for racial equality. These are people who have campaigned for the rights of children, the rights of refugees in Syria, among other refugees. These are the people who have sacrificed terribly so that others would not be tortured. People who protest wars of aggression. People who confront vested interests and the power of their own government, who say, I'm not going to be silent and let my government do whatever it chooses to do in the name of national sovereignty. Right? There ought to be limits. Right? So when you look at this long record of compassion, a sense for justice, a sense of responsibility, it seems to me reasonable to ask, what is it about human nature that makes people behave this way when they don't have to? This has been an age-old question, and I'd like to give several examples from different kind of cultures. Centuries ago, Mencius in China was asked this question. How do you explain why people behave this way toward other people? And he said, the answer is in human nature. And the answer is simple. The answer is, and I've let him speak for himself, human beings have a nature that cannot bear to see the sufferings of others. And then he explains this as follows. This is one of his most famous passages. Now, if anyone were to suddenly see a child fall into a well, his mind would immediately be filled with alarm, distress, pity, and immediately compassion. That he would react accordingly is not because he would use this opportunity to somehow think to himself and try to ingratiate himself with the child's parents, or because he would think to seek commendation from his neighbors and friends, or because he would just not like the adverse publicity. Right? And then he goes on to explain the dimension of human nature. One who lacks a mind that feels pity and compassion would not be a human being. One who lacks a mind that feels shame and aversion would not be a human being. One who lacks a mind that feels modesty and compliance would not be a human being. And one who lacks a mind that knows shame and dislike would not be a human being. That's one extreme, but it's not the whole story. The other side of the story is that if you work in the area of human rights, you see people who willingly, maliciously harm and abuse other people. These are the people who initiate the abuse that cause human rights activists to react in the first place. These are the people, to be clear about this, who enslave others. These are the people who discriminate against others based upon their age, their race, their sex, their orientation, right? Their class, their nation, their language, among many other things. These are the people who willingly launch wars of aggression. These are people who, quite frankly, willingly engage in torture. If I chose to use images, and I deliberately chose not to tonight, you can all recall this immediate image of a scene in Abu Ghraib prison in which you have a group of bodies, naked bodies laying in front of each other, piled on, and behind them is an American serviceman. His hands are crossed and he's wearing latex gloves. And he's looking at the camera. He's not ashamed of what he's doing. And he's not just looking at the camera, he's smiling at it. And you have to ask yourself, what is it about human nature that allows this man to do this? Some of you know that I spent time with the Milosevic trial in The Hague. And on this exact subject, I remember very clearly, I'll never forget it. I was probably 12 feet from Milosevic, and our eyes locked with each other. And I don't think I've ever been in the presence of such palpable evil in my entire life. Right? And what you do is you look into those eyes and you say, how in the world could you possibly, what is so sick about your soul that you deliberately engage in genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity? Right? And so you ask the question again, what is it about human nature that makes people do this to other people? And also, for centuries of time, people have written about this, and they said it's simple. It's human nature. Thucydides said, look, human nature is not compassion. It's all about power. His famous, as he recounts the Athenians talking to the Melians, the strong do what they can, the weak do what they must. Thomas Hobbes in the Leviathan talks about greed and lust, power after power. He says, if you want to understand human nature, that's what it's about. And if you want to understand human nature, you have to understand that it's war against one man against every other man. Right? After a very distinguished career the American sociologist William Graham Sumner was asked exactly the question we're posing tonight. And that is, Professor Sumner, after all of these years of studying human behavior, what conclusion have you reached about human nature? And this is what he said. I've reached this conclusion. All history is only one long story to this effect. Men have struggled for power over their fellow men in order that they might win the joys of earth at the expense of others, and might shift the burdens of life from their own shoulders upon those of others. Rotten, stinking, greedy human nature. So what are we to make of this? Two very different positions on these extremes that confront anyone involved with human rights. What's striking to me is that it shows the range of human behavior. And not only the extreme range, but everything that takes place between those extremes, and even more complicated, often that takes place within the same person. Right? That we're probably all capable of certain kind of behavior that we might be proud of, other kind of behavior that we're not so proud of. So how to find an answer? Part of the answer, sometimes, might be to approach the hard sciences and say we want to do detailed, measurable research that we can clearly probe this question about what is it that makes people behave the way they do? How do you explain human nature? That's one possibility. I'd like to suggest modestly that sometimes some of the greatest complexities of lives are found not in test tubes or in laboratories, but in stories from the humanities. And so I'm going to conclude my comment with one of these. Other teachers have used parables with success. This is a story. The origins of the story are somewhat under dispute at times, but it shouldn't detract from the message. And the story is told from a Native American culture, and it goes like this. Once upon a time, there was a grandfather, Cherokee grandfather, who was talking with his grandson. And the subject of the conversation had to do with exactly what we're talking about tonight. Human beings and life and human nature. And so the grandfather tells to the grandson, he said, "Grandson, I want you to understand that there's a battle going on within me. And the battle is between two wolves. One of these wolves is mean. He's aggressive. He's arrogant. Right? He's self-centered. Does not work well with others. He believes he's superior. Right? And that's a part of what battle is going on within me. There's another wolf. This wolf shows signs of compassion, of empathy, of the ability to cooperate with others, to be concerned about their particular feelings." And he said to his grandson, "This battle is going on within me, and it's going on within all of us. Why? Because it's a part of our human nature." And the grandson reflects, and he says, "Grandfather, which wolf wins?" And the grandfather says, "It all depends on which one you feed." Thank you. You can come up here. Huh?
Not sure if I'm on again. Yeah. You are. Okay. So, questions, comments from the...
No, come on.
Well, I have a comment for Paul.
Okay.
I like your wolf story because it fits in exactly to my final
exactly.
comment, that it depends whether you're talking about the wolf acting within the pack or between different packs.
Actually, in preparing this, I was struck, quite frankly, at the similarity on these two particular themes. I mean, your images about both cooperative behavior as well as the individual lording over the other one with aggressive tendencies. It's a very consistent pattern, right? And what's interesting is we come at it from very different starting points. And I think that that should be instructive. Hmm?
Is gender difference relevant to this question of the difference between the selfish individual and the cooperative group?
I might have to repeat that only because we're recording. So the question is gender difference relevant? I'm sorry.
To the difference between the selfish individual and the cooperative group, the dynamic of the two roles.
Right, between the individual versus the group.
Well, the simple answer is yes. It gets more complicated after that.
The question, G.D., is gender important in terms of this discussion? Right. I would argue, the quick answer is yes, but I want to give some more specifics about that. I think that, and I'll leave it to others to explain why this is true, but I think that in terms of the history of questions of human rights, I would say, without doing the measurement, that women have been more actively involved than men in terms of a wide range of issues. I think, for example, of obviously children, refugees, humanitarian law, been extremely important. Many, as Anya can tell you, who you're sitting next to, many of the women who worked on American women's rights certainly had their training in the anti-slavery movement in the 20s and the 30s, and I think that really escalated. And I think that, I guess I just see more passion and focused passion among women than I do men on this question. I mean, I have several students here, but in my courses on human rights, I think that there's probably a ratio of 65 women to 45 men, or whatever that's worth. Is that right? 35, 40. I'll stick with the math on somebody else. Right. It's about, yeah, but I think it's interesting. I think there's something to be said about compassion. I wouldn't want to push that too far, however. I've had, in public lectures, people have asked me, it's not surprising, well, what if women were leaders? Right? Would it make a difference? And what quickly, I know what people want to hear, but it quickly goes through my mind, Golda Meir, Margaret Thatcher, and Indira Gandhi, and I say, I don't think so. But that's a subject that's open to wide debate. Right?
Go ahead.
This is for both of you. What is the role and responsibility of our society in terms of feeding each of these metamorphic wolves?
We're trying to be nice to each other, not jump in. Do you want me to go ahead and start?
Sure, go ahead.
My own personal feeling, and it is a personal feeling, is that our role as society is to care for those who need attention and to prevent abuse from happening. Human rights fundamentally is protecting the rights of everyone. And that means preventing abuse by arbitrary power. Historically, the greatest abuser of rights have been governments, both in the historical term and in the present term, because of the power that's there to wield. That's a larger societal question. And in that, it seems to me that we owe it to not only the citizens of any given country, but quite frankly, the broader citizens of the world to cater to one wolf rather than the other. But the reason I like the wolf account so much is that it comes back to this point I raised about what role does free will play in this? Do you have choices? I believe we do. But and that's why I think it's so important to cultivate that rather than other kind of tendencies, as Fred mentioned in one of these slides, about aggressive behavior. Right. If that answers, to at least some extent, your question.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess my view would be, in terms of feeding the wolves, that the best thing that society can do is to make people aware that those two wolves are inside each one of us. And just be aware of the behavior, be aware of the choices that we have.
I think I mentioned that one of the challenges has to do with the fact that they are inside simultaneous, and that there are times when maybe the circumstances call for one more than the other. I know what side I would come down on, but I'm not, look, any historian is going to tell you that there are times of war, there are times of conflict. Some of these wars are wars of aggression, it seems to me are pretty easy to condemn. And in that I include wars of preventive wars and preemptive wars. That will mean something to some of you. But there are also wars, just for the sake of argument, half of all of those who have ever fought in a war have been invaded. They've been attacked by someone else. And it seems to me the defensive campaigns probably require a little different kind of standard of judgment. If you're a pacifist, a complete pacifist, you don't have a problem with any of this. You have an answer. But I think that the complexity of the human condition probably calls for different circumstances.
Regarding the two wolves, apparently everybody likes that. So,
Yeah.
so let's say genetically, for myself, let's say I'm more prone to be more evil or whatever. So already the bad wolf is bigger. So this war inside of me, you mentioned free will, but how much free will really would I have if I'm kind of already born screwed?
That's the question. No, I mean, people are smiling. That's the question. How much free will do we have? I don't know the answer to that. But maybe Fred does.
Well, sorry, I have a cold. I mean, we have genetic tendencies to behave different ways, and I think that's true. And again, I would say part of the way to deal with this is just that recognition. And free will, I'm not sure free will is one of those questions I don't think that it has an answer, because I don't think free from what? We are always going to be influenced by those tendencies, both by the genetic tendencies and by our environmental tendencies. So we have a choice, but how free that choice is, I think, is, I'm not even sure what question would actually mean. And again, I would say the main thing is just to be aware of that there is that tendency in an individual to act one way or the other. I think that's the best that we could hope for. And trust human nature as much as possible.
I would just come back to that point. I'm going to come down stronger on the side of free will than choice. But
How can you measure free will, though?
pardon me?
So it's like you're saying, I feel like you're saying you can measure free will in a way, because if this wolf is bigger, so to speak, the bad wolf, then you're kind of measuring.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I guess I want to come down on the side of free will, but I really do, because I think that we have choices that we can make. I mean, you can, even in terms of questions of anger, right? You have choices about the way that you're going to express that anger. Right? I mean, you can go put your fist through that wall, go punch a bag, go out and have a beer and punch somebody out, cause a fight, right? Or you can say, I'm going to try to control this in some meaningful way. You could take your feelings out vicariously by watching a physically intense athletic event, right? I mean, there are all kinds of things you could do. But I can tell you that if I didn't believe in the power of free will, I just don't know what the range is what I'm saying. But I think it's very important. And if I didn't feel that way, I wouldn't spend my life teaching students. I'd like to think that we have some control.
I agree with you.
There was a, this will mean something to some of you. Years ago, there was a comedian by the name of Flip Wilson. Yes. Anyway, he had a character that he portrayed called Geraldine. All right. He was really funny, I got to tell you. But anytime Geraldine did something wrong, right, or something she wasn't happy about, she always said, "The devil made me do it." Right? Well, that was a handy excuse. And I think that one of the things that I find so questionable about sort of genetically pre-programmed on something is that it sort of alleviates your own responsibility for how you respond to questions. And in my own field, how you respond to those who are suffering because of some form of abuse. Right?
But just to follow up from the other side of the table, so I think the word genetically pre-programmed is inappropriate. It's not that we're programmed to behave in certain ways, but I know you may not like to measure things. But when we do measure personality and the choices that people make, the studies separating identical twins at birth, the studies show us that about half of our choices are largely influenced by our genetics. And half of our choices are not genetic. They're environmental or they're free will. So I think the important thing is recognizing that it's not one or the other, it's some combination of the two.
That makes sense to me.
Do you think that some of the sports that are played around the world feed into the aggressive wolf? And not just the people that are playing the sport, but the fans? For instance, at soccer games where, I'd like to know whether sports are a problem.
Well, I can provide at least an initial comment. I've always liked playing sports, and I don't, in one way or the other, I like to consider myself a sports fan up to a certain point. I think there are limits. I don't have season tickets, but I go to a couple of Grizz football games every year. And I think there are people who behave themselves, and I think there are people who go off the deep end. And this is a personal opinion, not a professional opinion. And I think that you can see people get really worked up about things. I spent, football is, I think, more or less controlled. And there are people who still yell at the refs. But I've seen games overseas that make American football look pretty simple and pretty benign, actually. There's an annual contest between New Zealand and Australia. Some of you are going to know this, for rugby. And it's called State of Origin. The contest is called the State of Origin, and already I'm getting nervous about this. And if there are any rules in that game, I don't know what they are. And it's pretty scary. Right? I mean, there's some things you just say, I'm not going to watch this. Right? I mean, there are sports that are televised now on television that I won't watch, and I won't name them, but I don't know why anyone would be interested in watching someone get absolutely pulverized. I mean, it doesn't do anything for me. In fact, it's just repulsive to my mind.
There was a question back here. Sorry.
I had one earlier. It was kind of piggybacked on the individual choice and the predisposition, perhaps.
Yeah,
Maybe studies on domestic violence. Have they, and I don't think alcohol maybe has alcoholism as strong as of correlation, but on domestic violence, have there been any studies that show that an individual who grew up, which might talk about their environment, is more prone to carry a trait that makes them a domestic violence abuser?
Well, I can't speak to that specifically, but there are lots of studies showing that there are certain genes which are associated with certain aggressive behaviors. And alcoholism, you mentioned, alcoholism also has very strong genetic control as well. So I think almost any trait that we can think about, there is going to be some genetic influence, but I don't think that means we don't have a choice. But I think we have to recognize the fact that different people are going to be predisposed to different behaviors, just like different people are predisposed to different types of diseases. And somehow we have to deal with that. Just like with people, there's certain genes that make you more likely to get certain forms of cancer, and society then behaves accordingly. I think that recognizing that different people are also going to be predisposed to certain kinds of behavior somehow should be taken into account as well.
You know, I don't want to put them on the spot, but there are other people in this audience who might be able to answer your question if they choose to speak up. I mean, who study these things? Chris, I mean, I see you hiding behind there. Can you answer that question at all?
So there is a correlation with alcohol. There is a correlation with alcoholism and alcohol abuse. But if you take out the influence of alcohol, there's something called that psychologists call intergenerational transmission, and that is based on genetics. But we can't separate it out, as discussed, from observation. We know that people that grow up in violent families are at greater risk of being violent in relationships. But it also is the case that people can grow up in a violent family and not be violent in relationships, okay? So it's an increased risk, but it's not a prediction that an individual will be violent. And there are people who are violent in relationships who did not grow up in violent households. So it's complex.
Thanks, Chris. I knew you could answer.
What's the role of resources in determining which behavior comes out? You know, historically you can look at patterns of behavior where groups of people are living harmoniously until resources, food, water, energy, become limited, and then they factionalize and the other behavior manifests itself. So how fundamental are resources to this discussion?
You want to start?
Well, the answer is always the same. It's complicated. But the story that I can think of is when Pacific Islanders got to New Zealand. So resources were limited on the main island in New Zealand. And the way that the different tribes dealt with that shortage of resources was by being very aggressive. So the different Maori tribes were very aggressive towards one another. But then there was Chatham Island, which some Pacific Islanders went to, and there the resources were unbelievably short. And there was a chief who recognized that if we keep fighting over these limited resources, we're not going to be able to survive. So they became pacifists. And so Jared Diamond talks about this dichotomy in the book, that the response to completely limited resource and smaller area was to become completely altruistic and social, where in the place where there were more resources, that the response was to become more aggressive in intertribal conflict.
I think that historically, the question of resources has to do with two things. One are domestic issues, and secondly is external. Domestically, I think one of the major divisions has always been one of class. Americans don't like to talk about class in general, and at times of political elections you hear a lot of discussion about class, and someone is accused of class warfare if you even raise it. But historically, class has been an important function of discrimination, and invariably that has to do with questions of resources. How are those resources allocated? In the area of human rights, these are known as economic and social rights as compared to political and civil rights. And I could talk about that, but there's a category of rights that are specifically designed to deal with resources. I think externally, it often is the cause of war, wars of aggression to gain resources, of one kind or another. Wars are caused for many reasons, and resource is only one of those. Right? I thought there was just a powerful scene in Avatar that, speaking of human nature, these humans descend on this island and they engage in brutal activity for a reason. They want something. And the manager of this company gathers all the management team around him and he says, "You see this? This is why we're here. We're not leaving until we get it. And we'll decimate the entire population if this is what it takes to get this." And I think that there certainly are cases in history where that is exactly accurate. It's an accurate representation of whether it's gold, whether it's slaves, whether it's rubber, ivory, oil, right, in which resources play a very important role.
Could I ask one question?
Yeah.
So from everything I've
You're
heard...
the dean, Chris. You get
Well,
to...
You have the microphone, too.
On a night like tonight, that doesn't matter. It's pretty clear that, Chris Fiore just cited environmental factors that are important but do not determine. And Fred cited genetic situations that are important but do not determine. So it's very clear that whether you're talking about genes or environment, nothing's truly determinative. They're factors. And so that suggests to me as an educator that education is the most important thing we have to think about how to shift the balance from one wolf to the next. So I wonder if you could just comment on that a bit. And I don't mean that in the most abstract sense. I mean it in the sense of how we bring it into our curriculum, maybe, how we can emphasize it in a way that's a value in our education that's actually meaningful.
Do you want to start or you want me to?
Well, you'll give a much better answer, but I guess
No.
my first answer would be combining courses like this. So that rather having me teach a course in evolution and Paul teach a course in human rights, I think it's activities like this, which I think are most likely to be helpful from an educational perspective.
I want to take your question and broaden it a little bit, Chris, then I'll come back to specifically what you're asking about university education. Over the last few years, I've had the wonderful blessing of becoming a grandparent. And that's related to your question, actually. Education. When you're parents, you're so involved with the day-to-day activities of your kids, you don't see the big picture. When you're a grandparent, you see them and you give them back at the end of the day, and you can sit back and you can watch some of the process of language acquisition and other things, including the acquisition of certain kind of values. And to see your grandkids on the playground or in some setting to say, that's not right. And you wonder, geez, where did they get that? Or, I don't know. I know what everybody else is doing, but I don't think I should be doing that. That education starts at a very early stage, and with child development and so on, and it's a delight to be able to watch that transpire. But to bring that up to the university level, those of us who have the privilege of teaching subjects that we really enjoy and seeing those with teaching awards that have just been received and have a passion for that, get to deal with this on a daily basis in terms of what it is that we teach our students. Some of the things we teach our students are facts. And other things, either directly or indirectly, are more in the category of values, which is really what your question is about. And in this regard, I've always been exceedingly proud of the University of Montana for having, in its general educational requirements, a category called ethical values, or ethics and human rights. One of the people most responsible for that is here in this audience tonight. It's Professor Borgman from the philosophy department. So Albert, thank you for... And for those of us who are privileged to teach courses in Gen Ed on that subject, and many people in this audience, in fact, teach in that category, it just seems to me something really special, something I'm really proud of the University of Montana for doing. And I'm proud to be a member of the faculty of a campus that values values. And I think it's something we can all be proud of.
So we have genes and the environment, and then modulates who we are, and then the battles that we have, and then we have choice, which essentially is consciousness, right? And how does law incorporate that?
The question is, how does law operate?
How is human nature incorporated into law? When do we say that somebody needs to be punished because it's been very bad, or needs, yeah?
I think that question is for me.
That's for you.
I'm only smiling because yesterday afternoon, actually, I gave an hour-and-a-half lecture at the law school on exactly that subject. And we don't have an hour and a half. I'm going to repeat it. It's a huge, I'm only smiling because it's a huge topic. The question is extremely important. And I think that any society, the question was asked about law, about society and society's responsibilities, fundamentally at its best. Now that's an important qualifier, because sometimes laws are just and sometimes laws are not just. Right? So I acknowledge that. Fundamentally, laws and their importance for human rights is the fact that you want to provide a check on the arbitrary abuse of power, right? When all is said and done. And the way that most societies do that is to provide some kind of law that establishes that. And this is not a modern concept. I could talk about 1780 BC and the Code of Hammurabi, right? Or I could talk about the Cyrus Cylinder, or I could talk about Mosaic law, right? And lead up to the present. It's the way societies try to govern themselves in order to check, right, the worst features of our behavior. Features that we're all probably capable of doing at one time or another, even though we might not want to acknowledge it. And to carry on through the second part of your question, if you have law, it does not become the rule of law unless it has the force of law, and that doesn't happen unless you have enforcement, right? So just to have a law on the books does not mean it's necessarily going to provide the protection that you want. Now, in daily news, let alone other countries of the world, that's one of the things that's so fascinating about looking at rulings of the Supreme Court, right? Over and over again, they're ruling on issues in the Bill of Rights, which deal with civil and political rights, about the meaning of life and when does it start, and right? What do you mean about freedom of speech? What does it mean to have equal protection? It takes you, right, until 1920 to have the 19th Amendment about women can have the right to vote, right? Well, laws play an important role in regulating this dilemma that we've been talking about in terms of human nature. And I guess I would argue that at their best, laws are designed to bring out the best in us and to check the worst.
Maybe we could have one more question, and then we have food outside waiting for everybody.
I just had a question. You were kind of saying earlier something about religion and stuff, and it kind of just hit me with some of the stuff you guys are talking about. If you did any studies on like religion and how like human nature is based off of some of that belief, just for example, like I know like the Christian faith, how humankind was created perfect, and then evil came in, and then you had the choices and the free will. So I just wanted to, I guess, see if you guys even like studied more of that, and what was your take on that, free will? And
you want to start, Fred?
I don't talk much about religion in my classes.
I do. And I'm smiling because I want to answer the question, and everybody else wants to go out and have something to eat. So I'll try to be brief but accurate at a time. I think all religious faiths and all traditions struggle with this question of human nature, which we've been discussing tonight, right? All of them. I mean, you can't, in terms of, you've mentioned your own heritage, you can't possibly read Ecclesiastics or read the Psalms, right, or read Proverbs without fundamentally being confronted over and over again, not about just about God's role in the world, but about human nature, right? What are you working with? The account of Job is a perfect one as well. These all deal with human nature, which is the subject. But I need to tell you that for someone in human rights, religion is a mixed history, right? That is, the numbers of human rights activists, historically speaking, who have been motivated by their religious beliefs is absolutely unmistakable, because they've argued that their faith, whatever it is, calls them to action. That, and again, I'm going to use language that you're going to be familiar with, faith without works, right? If you believe something, it ought to have some kind of impact. And so I could give you many examples of this if you wish. On the same token, not all religious faiths speak consistently, in my judgment. And many, many times religious traditions are hijacked for political agendas of one kind or another. I'm guessing as we watch this unfolding of what happened in Boston, this might be one of those, according to preliminary reports, and would just say this has nothing to do with religious faith, right? And so when you look at this question of the impact of religion on human rights, what I'm telling you is that you need to be very discerning and very discriminating against any kind of notions that lump all of these things together, right? It's a mixed history.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Wall.
Thank you. Good job, Philip.